What up, guys
That
and
was
girls? It's
so off.
Bobby.
And this is Sean.
Coming back to you guys for another week's episode of the Cronus cast. This week's episode is brought to you by Paragon Recovery, as we have been mentioning for the last, I guess, years since I've been using them. Huge fan of Paragon Recovery. They have a bunch of great supplements. I particularly like the Sleep Gains or Night Gain supplement, which is their sleep supplement, and their Flame Off supplement, which is their anti-inflammatory supplement. Both great products, both highly recommended. Use the code Cronus for 15% off, and then if you're military or first responder, feel free to hit them up directly for an increased discount. I believe they're still running a 40% off discount promotion right now. So if you are in the need for some supplements, recommend you hit them up and get it supplied because I just got resupplied last week. Again, highly recommended. Check them out. Great company, great group of guys.
I'm not going to do my resupply until I get to New York City, where I'm really going to need the extra protection uh, from the COVID.
Oh yeah, I would definitely for sure take vitamin D. I guess it's a good that we can start off this week by talking about stuff that I've been doing from a supplement perspective, or just supplementing in general. I think
Yeah,
that
that'd be
because
great.
guys, I discuss a lot about supplements. So I really much say that there's like five supplements that I would consider kind of essential supplements. Number one is caffeine. Can be in your coffee, in your pre-workout, but definitely caffeine. I prefer less adulterated. So like coffee is my preferred source of caffeine.
Love coffee.
Gotta get the coffee. Not to mention because it has the caffeine, but also a lot of antioxidants, which also help with some other things too in your body. So caffeine's number one. Number two is creatine. Creatine. Somebody asked us in the Q&A session this week about if creatine is actually damaging to your kidneys. I actually looked in the science in the literature, and there's a meta-analysis, which is a study of studies that shows there is no damage to your kidneys or any elevation in your kidney markers from taking creatine. However, if you have some inherent kidney disease, it may make your kidney function worse. But that's also very dependent on you. But for the vast majority of people, if you are healthy and do not have any kidney disease, you'll be fine taking creatine. So creatine is number two. Number three is fish oil. I'm a big fan of fish oil. Helps with a lot of anti-inflammatory things. Also gives you some other fatty acids, essential fatty acids that you don't really get in your diet normally. And these essential fatty acids are very beneficial to helping you with neuronal function, but it also helps a lot with inflammation and reducing some of the it has some anti-inflammatory effects. I don't want to get too much into the science between omega-3s and omega-6 fatty acids, but basically the more omega-6 fatty acids you have in your diet, the less inflammatory state you're in. So omega-3 fatty acids are usually found in like nuts and ground nuts. But I was reading in science there in one of my textbooks that the ratio of omega-3s and omega-6s in your cells will dictate on kind of how healthy or unhealthy you are. It's kind of far-reaching, but fish oil is a pretty good one. You want to get ones with a lot of omega-6 fatty acids, so high DHA, high EPA fish oil. Number four that we talk about, caffeine, creatine, fish oil, vitamin D. For generally, pretty much speaking, unless you're outside every day for like 30 minutes with your shirt off, you're gonna be deficient in vitamin D. Especially for you, Sean, being the little more lighter, fair skinned. You're not
Yes.
gonna you're gonna be genetically predisposed to having vitamin D deficiencies. So vitamin D is a very interesting vitamin.
Well, that's
They've been
fucking racist.
well, it's the truth.
That's
People
science. I can't believe
It
this.
is science. Uh, but pretty much people that are going to be deficient in vitamin D anyways. So you want to supplement vitamin D, and it's a pretty cheap supplement too. It has a lot of wide-ranging effects in the body. The most well-known is like its effects on calcium, but they've also been doing studies on vitamin D and things like diabetes and asthma and like ADHD. I saw an article about vitamin D and ADHD and not having a vitamin D and having ADHD. I've seen articles about vitamin D and like in ICU and critically ill people too. But generally speaking, vitamin D is a not very well studied vitamin that has probably very large effects too. It has some effects in immunity as well, so that's why I recommend doing vitamin D, especially during these times. But I
Well,
just
here's a
try to supplement.
question. Vitamin D. Have we now harnessed the power of the sun into a pill form for the pastier individuals that can't go outside right now?
More or less so. So without getting super into the physiology behind vitamin D, basically, I would have to like review the pathway for it. But basically, like the sun hitting your skin is what converts vitamin D2 into D3, and D3 is the bioactive one in your body. I think your kidneys produce something called 1 alpha hydroxylase, which takes like vitamin D into D2, and then the sunlight or UV converts D2 to D3. But there's like a whole like endocrine hormone pathway for that. I honestly I can't say off the top of my head, but that's what vitamin D3 is. D3 is the active form of vitamin D, and you want to take about 2,000 IU's a day just to make you in normal range. And what's the fifth one? I said creatine, caffeine, vitamin D, fish
Protein.
oil. Oh, and protein. Yeah, and protein. So typically a whey protein or whatever you're most comfortable with. Whey protein, generally speaking, is the most bang for your buck because of the amino acid profile. Other things to be aware of with protein is that collagen protein is not considered a complete protein source. They tell you it's good for building strong bone, like good ligaments and stuff, but that's just because it's collagen and it might produce. The theory is that intaking collagen will help your body to produce more collagen. I don't think the science is there, not that I'm familiar with. But there is interesting data on collagen and reducing like autoinflammatory syndromes such as like rheumatoid arthritis or osteoarthritis. It can help a lot with that. So that's kind of our 5 supplements that we talk about that that I believe in at least. Everything else you can kind of like make arguments for, but the science and the data on everything else people talk about is kind of more hit or miss.
Yeah, and for people that are interested in knowing what I'm doing to stay healthy, I've got my crystals set up. I've got a bunch of rocks that I've collected from the garden, and I also like to take nature walks. And so I think those are the holistic approaches. Um, Especially if you're living in Oregon, that's probably something you can do.
And not to really say that it doesn't help. I'm actually a pretty big fan of, well, not I'll say fan, but I definitely believe in a lot of pseudosciencey things or like kind of quackery things that a lot of medical professionals kind of shit on because I'm a pretty firm believer in the placebo effect and that if you believe something works, it's going to work. Whether that is like rooted in science, but there's interesting things in like placebo and nocebo effects that the placebo effect's real. So if you believe that something's gonna work, something's most likely gonna work. So whether that's crystal balls or crystals or like chakras, whatever, what have you. Um, I think there's interesting studies that like deliberately try to fool people into thinking that they're getting some like groundbreaking treatment, and people get like positive results from this treatment because of the fact that they mentally give themselves positive results. Very interesting.
Well, they talk about that in one of the Iron Man books that I just read about goal setting.
Mm-hmm.
And for instance, like, if I have a pace that I want to set on the marathon or the swim or the bike, I put those Post-its up all over like my house. So when I go to the, bathroom in the morning and I'm washing my face, like, all right, I want to do this marathon in like sub 3:30. I want to do the bike in sub like 5.5. And eventually your goals seem more attainable after writing them down and seeing them constantly throughout like a training period so that when you're prepared to go and actually commit to the actual timed event, um, you have something that you think is definitely within your grasp.
Mm-hmm.
So I like the placebo effect.
Yeah, I'm a huge fan of placebo effect. Whether that's why another thing that kind of brings up is like people ask us like which training program is the best one to do. And like all training programs are pretty good for the vast majority of them if they're written by like someone that understands how to train. You're probably gonna get good results. Doesn't matter which training program you do, but the best program for you is the one that you follow and the one that you find enjoyable. And that's kind of like what we try and preach is that no training program is perfect, but the fact that you pick a training program and like the training program and stick with the training program, that's gonna be the biggest factor for success in the future. Not like which one's the right one. It's more so just picking one and sticking with it for the long term. But yeah, I really like that whole like visualization and like the mind power of the mind, especially like endurance stuff. I find it. That's why I think I find a lot of interest in ultra events for me is that it becomes so much more mental. Like, it's like a mental game over like hours and hours of time.
Well, speaking of ultra, you did a half marathon today. How did that go?
I did a 13.1 miles. I think it was like a hour and 50 something. It was under. I think it was like 8:40 pace. I want to say for 13.1 miles. I actually wasn't planning on doing a half marathon today. I just decided yesterday that because my 30th birthday is next Saturday, and my tradition is usually to do 225 back squats for your age and reps. That's usually my tradition for my birthday. But since gyms are closed, I can't really get into the gym to get the 225-pound barbell to do back squats. So instead, I'm gonna run a 30K, which is like 18.5 miles next week.
Damn, dude. Well, from just waking up and running a marathon, now you've got some fun structure ahead of you. And we talked about at the beginning the supplements you're taking, but for recovery tools, what do you have right now within the apartment?
So that's another thing that I'm a little bit more, I guess, anal about. The biggest thing. So the biggest thing about like improving your physical performance is not how hard you train, but rather how well you recover. I guess it's not so much how you train, but also how you train and how you recover. It's like a two-edged paradigm. It's not just one about training, but it's also about recovery. So in terms of recovery, I've got like a bunch of stuff that I use at home. I'm a big fan. I've got a like a hypervolt, like a percussion device that I bought on eBay for like $60. So I use that a lot, just mostly for like warm up and cool down mostly. And then I have a Compex that I bought on like Facebook Market. It's like a couple years old, but I got it at a really good quality for like $80 too. So I do like I like using my Compex a lot, and then I've got like the standard like foam roller, like a yoga mat that I use. I've got a Theracan that I'm a big fan of that I use to get my back, the cross balls, and kind of those other like myofascial release tools that I use. But the big ones are gonna like just stretching is a big one. I probably put like an hour's worth of stretching in the day, or I try to at least.
Dude, when we went to RASP 2 and the first time that like I did MFR, like we're, in the CRTF there, like I remember rolling out next to you and just being like, this is the most painful thing I have ever done in my entire life. And then now consistently continue to do it after like really voluminous days. What you talked about prior to getting out there and just getting your muscles loose and warm is a great tool for it as well. I need to get that knockoff Hypervolt though.
Dude, it's actually really because like as much as like people like the Theragun's like fucking $400. I didn't realize that
No, it's
until.
like more than that. It's like 500.
Is it really?
Yeah, it's unreal how expensive. Like because it's now they have all these like cool alien looking designs and they have all the other attachments that you can throw on. I think it's almost like a Whoop thing where some of them have like really cool apps that come with it that allow you to see your breakdown of recovery, so you know exactly what you're doing. I just think it's like a huge market now, but if you can get one for like $80, it's perfect.
Yeah, the thing is like all like I kind of did some research into it and the knockoff brands. And basically, the knockoff brands, they're still coming from the same factories that make like their name brand ones. It's like how they have Yetis, and they have the Walmart brand Yeti, which is the same.
It's the same thing.
Same thing. It's just different branding. Yeah, but it's the same exact thing with the percussion devices. Like you can find like the ones that are made in China. You can get a non-name brand one for like $50 or $60. It's the same thing as a Hypervolt. Same like design. It's just it's just a different. It's not a branded one.
Yeah.
But it's the same
Well, that's cool.
quality.
I'm gonna have to get that when I get to the city. And right now, I'm looking at what kind of like indoor trainer I'm gonna need because there's only so many bike routes within the city.
Yeah.
Especially training at distance. So I might have to get like either rollers, or like a Cyclops or Kinetic like indoor trainer. But the problem is like they can be pretty loud,
Mm-hmm.
and then space is a huge issue within a small apartment. So that's my next piece that I'm researching. What's the best training tool for the bike piece until
Yeah.
my pool opens up too.
Yeah, it's definitely something that I'm excited to get more into is like learning more about the endurance side of stuff because I mean we've always done like, you know, the lifting and like short to like low medium distances like what 10K is probably like our like most comfortable range, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, so like we don't have much experience past 10K, so this will be it's very interesting for me just learning more about like the endurance side of stuff. Very interesting.
Yeah, my thing that I picked up on when I first got to regiment, then when I was leaving, was like kind of the period that I was doing halves and training for halves. And I spent a lot of time trying to find headphones that would stay in for that duration of a run, and eventually just didn't find any because I have like really misshapen earlobes.
Mm-hmm.
So I just did it without headphones, and eventually I feel better now when I'm doing endurance pieces without music. So I can like really just focus on my cadence. I can hear my breathing, my foot strikes, all the things that you might not hear or recognize when you're blasting Weezer on a
Mm-hmm.
20K.
Yeah, I will say that I do usually run with headphones in just because with my long ones, I just think I don't know if it's like an ego thing or something about like it's wasting my time. Like I could be getting something more out of it, like cross training wise. So
Yeah.
I've been listening to audiobooks and I usually listen to audiobooks and podcasts while I run just to have some noise in the background.
Oh, it's just so boring running with nothing. Like I will concede that point. Like I ran a women's half marathon. Um, I think I was the number one finisher for the men, so that's good for me. But I remember being so bored. I mean, like there were stretches where I wasn't within another 100 meters of any runners,
Mm-hmm.
and just being like, all right, well, this is Savannah. It's nice. I am so bored. Oh my god! Like,
Yeah.
where's the next aid station that's blasting like Katy Perry?
Yeah, I would say like usually my cutoff is like about an hour. That I put headphones in, so usually about like 6 or 7 miles ish. Usually my cutoff for throwing headphones in. Past an hour, I think I just get to the point where it's just like I'm just wasting too much good time that I could be learning something.
Yeah, and when I like to listen to music too, like when I was doing the stair climber every Saturday and doing a couple hundred floors, I essentially only listened to the same like 10 or 11 songs like every single time. It wasn't like I was scrolling through my phone like what would be a good like playlist. It's like I always listened to Dan Vasich, like Toss a Coin to Your Witcher and some of the other remakes that he has, because it's like this thrasher metal uh, cover guy out of I think Brazil, and like it's great music. It pumps you up. Like I'd want to like hit the screen a couple times, like listening to it like a weirdo in my Ranger panties. But that's everything. I can't listen to too much different music if I'm just focusing on like one kind of conditioning piece. If I'm just running consistently, I don't want something that's going to be going up and
Mm-hmm.
down like with different beats.
Yeah, I mean that's a big thing. I actually did some research into that too in terms of like the music they listen to when you run because I think everybody has like a natural cadence they fall into when they run. So like if you have music that has like the BPMs that like shift a lot, you find yourself like either speeding up or slowing down based on the music, which can be good depending on like what you want to do with it. But I feel like for most runners, it's probably counterproductive because you're trying to get like a specific training and stimulus. But I know like with EDM that's set to a certain BPM, it can support like having or sustaining your cadence throughout your run and keeping you like more consistent in your cadence too, which I think is kind of
That's
interesting
what I
too.
love about like Barry's Boot Camp and Soul Cycle the couple times that I've gone. I almost think that it's more impressive that the instructors or whomever is running the studio has music that is set to every single portion of
Mm-hmm.
their workouts.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like segmented to the intensity levels that you're expected at that exact time, and everybody can generally get within that same rhythm. Regardless if you're on a treadmill running like a 12 miles per hour or you're doing an 8 miles per hour, everyone can get into that same groove. I like that a lot. I've not been able to even program that consistently for myself when I know that I'm going to have a Metcon that has like certain movements.
Yeah, I mean it's interesting. Yeah, I wonder how they do that. They must have like a like a BPM or something like have songs broken down like by BPMs or something, and then pick like a song that they want to play for a certain period with like high beat. I don't know, but that'd be my guess.
Yep. People that are more musically talented than I am. I mean, you'd think that someone that played in such illustrious orchestras all over this country would understand the breakdown and be able to do it himself, but I do not have that skill. Nor do I have like the musical repertoire to fall back on and be like, that's a really good artist. Like today, if you showed me the top like 10 artists in like the pop culture and music realm, I don't think I could name like any of them. Like Lady Gaga is probably Katy Perry, like those, like I'm dating myself. Like that was like 2011, 2012 when you're like 22, 23, like yeah, like I'm still hip and like I don't know why my parents don't know who these people are. What a bunch of old geezers. Now I'm like, who's Lizzo? What is Lizzo? Like I don't know this person.
You're so dated. You're so old, dude. You're like a boomer
So
now.
old, man.
You're a
31.
boomer.
I forgot that I was 31 the other day, by the way. The people that live next door have a small son, and he's like very cute, and he was like, how old are you? I was like, third. Oh, God, I'm 31. Oh, oh, gross.
Yeah, I'm turning 30 next Saturday. Can't wait.
It's downhill from here, man.
I just
Though I will say this. I remember specifically a couple of my squad leaders saying to me, sir, you don't get it. When you hit 30, it's like your body shuts down. That's why I look the way that I do. That's why I perform physically the way that I do. And these were all regular Army because any squad leader that I had in regiment was like my age. I now want to find them and say bullshit. Like it might hurt a little bit and I might not recover as quickly, but I haven't like I'm not dropping the ball on any single like major exercise or conditioning piece right now. So for anyone out there that's fearful of turning the big 3-0, like it's all horseshit if people tell you that once you hit that age you're like all of a sudden just gonna fall apart and just be this decrepit like pile of human flesh.
dude, I think I'm like the best shape of my life right now. Still, I've every year like my interests kind of shift a little bit in terms of like my goals for physical fitness wise. But I'm pretty sure like every year I get fitter and fitter every year. It's kind of weird, or I mean it's obviously a good thing, but whatever we're doing is working because every year I get fitter and fitter, and I still see improvements in what I'm working on.
Well, we talked about that too just before we started the session today. But you're looking more into your ultramarathon training, and we're doing some readings and found that like weightlifting, something that we have promoted in addition to your conditioning pieces, actually has a positive effect on your aerobic capacity. So like, what are you generally finding about that, or like, are there limits that you've researched?
Yeah, so this has only been I only started looking like the last 30 minutes. I started reading or just like finding articles, just like searching for like endurance training, kind of the physiology of endurance training. But one of these whole like subset of articles that I found was they were talking about the idea of concurrent training, because classically, people will tell you that like endurance athletes have to train endurance wise only. Like you only can run or do endurance training for endurance athletes, because if you do like strength training or any other like power training or weightlifting or what have you, it has like negative. It's not for the sport specifically, but there's a lot of like data and science in the literature that says that people that train both strength and hypertrophy while concurrently training endurance, people who do both have better power outputs, have better lean body mass, better power outputs, and better like VO2 maxes, even though they're a little bit heavier than their non-weight training partners, which is super interesting because I mean it kind of is counter intuitive thinking about that way. If you think about like an endurance athlete, you think that you want someone that's something like 130 pounds, like skin, like very skinny, because it's harder to sustain mass when you're doing like endurance level events. But then the science shows, or the data kind of indicates that it's the other way around, and that people that are a little bit more leaner with a little bit more lean body mass or more muscle mass actually perform better than the peers that don't do weightlifting. Really interesting. I haven't really dug into the literature yet, but that's kind of like the cursory results that I started seeing on my first literature review. So I'll have more next week once I start reading this week and these articles I found.
Well, if you're looking to get motivated to run like the marathon plus distances, have you seen the Nike documentary called Breaking Two?
I have not, and that's the marathon one, right? About the lunar glide. That's like the shoe one.
Yeah, so I think in this documentary, like spoiler alert, Kipchoge, the other two runners, D'Souza, and Tadisi, all from like Ethiopia, Eritrea, and Kenya, are trying to break the sub 2 hour marathon. This was filmed in like 2016 or 17 when Nike was like, "Hey, let's really focus on this." They don't break it. He is subsequently Kipchoge, that is, has broken the 2 hour marathon. They did it in Germany this last year. He ran like a 1:59:40 something, which is incredible. But like
Insane.
watching that is unreal. Like they are moving. It's like you're watching someone sprint. I mean, they'll do a sub hour half marathon and the training up for it, and you're just like, I can't believe humans are moving this fast. Like that's a 4 something mile, just flat out, no problem.
Yeah, that's like the crazy thing. Like the limits of human performance, wild. That's what I think that I love learning about that or thinking about that. It's like crazy to think about because like a 2 hour marathon is like a 4:30 pace, right?
I'll do the math right now.
Yeah, it's something ridiculous. It's like a sub 5 minute pace for a marathon.
Yeah, 4.58.
So like yeah, like a 4:30 marathon.
4:34. My fastest miles ever were like in the 4:30s. I can't imagine. And like afterwards, I was destroyed
Yeah.
every single time. I can't imagine these individuals just being like, whatever, 26. Yeah, sure.
Yeah, like a sub five
Unreal.
a sub 5 mile for me is probably really good. I've actually never tested my max mile in a while, but I think I'm around like a 5 minute. Like I think that the best was like a 5 for me. So that's like
That was always my
incomprehensible.
goal, was to do a 500-pound deadlift and a 5 minute mile. Because someone in regiment told me about it because I was able to pull five and I was a fast runner, and I was like, huh. I wonder if I can do this in a single like hour period between like resting, and I think I would deadlift first though before I did the run.
Yeah, I think I would too. I actually saw. Wait, what the fuck? One of the articles I saw, their like our abstract was like, if you lift before you run, you have no impact on your aerobic fitness, but if you run before you lift, you'll have decreased lifting performance.
Yeah, well, that's why like all the military prep stuff, the conditioning comes after all of the
Hmm.
running pieces. It's like even if you're tired, like your body's gonna flush that out, and you're gonna get into that mental headspace where you can pick back up to that 6 minute interval pace that you were looking for.
Yeah. So like, even though I think it's kind of funny that the stuff that we've been doing over the years is actually scientifically backed up, coincidentally,
Yeah,
or is it
good
coincidentally
for
or
us. We are just a. I'm imagining there's like a roaring crowd right now behind me. But speaking of roaring crowds, I know when you were at West Point and I was a cadet, people generally applauded us for our service because, hashtag TOFYS heroes, which, by the way, now I can like double thank you for your service as being like a medical professional in the time of COVID-19 and a veteran. Like, you're going to get free meals for life now at TGIF Fridays. Just be prepared.
dude, I have like mixed feelings about the whole healthcare worker. I guess like healthcare worker worship that they have going on right now in the country. It's fucking weird, man. It's like I don't know. It's funny because like a couple months ago, people were saying like, "Fuck doctors, they make too much money. Fuck them." But now it's
Yeah.
like thank our God, doctors and nurses. And I also like don't like how with this worship, like this healthcare worship thing going on, kind of the sentiment behind that. You have a lot of people like that, like the virtue signaling is too much for me. It's like too much virtue signaling. You know what I mean?
Oh, I can't stand whenever I turn on like Instagram and like half the feed is just people wanting to show themselves like, whistling out of their window or like banging their pots and pans. Like I like people doing quiet things, like go take meals to the hospital and
Mm.
help out the healthcare workers. If you know they have families, like see what you can do to help them out, but just standing up there and I don't know. I think it's almost like a platitude, at some point. It's like when you get thanked for your service, you're like, dude, we've been at war for, almost 2 decades now. Like,
It's the
all
same
right,
thing.
dude. Like just like I don't need to see it recorded to know that you appreciate, what I've done or what the healthcare worker's done.
Dude, it's the same thing as like the military, like military worship in America. It's the same exact thing that, but it's it's interesting. I don't know if it's like funny, but like during this pandemic, people are like, oh, these people are essential workers. Healthcare workers are so essential. They do like the God's work. But then like I guarantee you, in like 3 months, when people forget about this, they're gonna be like, you know, these healthcare workers make too much money, or
Oh,
like,
not only that, it's going to be one of those. My doctor told me that I'm overweight. How dare they?
mm-hmm.
Like that I think we're like getting like tunnel focused on the singular issue that like doctors, nurses, and healthcare professionals are dealing with. But when it goes back to like regular life, it's like okay, like continue this like level of gratitude then when they're doing something else on your body to try to create a healthy human. Like it can't just be fleeting.
Yeah, I also think that it's also kind of funny because I'm now seeing like, especially with Christina too, a lot of her nurse friends will like kind of flex on social media, saying that like I'm essential or like I'm a hero, and then
Yeah.
it's just like, come on, man, like nobody that goes into these fields, necessarily goes into it for the public support. It's like in the military, like nobody goes into the army because they want to be thanked for their service, or like that shouldn't be your main motivation to join the military is to
No.
get thanked for your service.
They're the same people that if they were in the military after being at a range would throw up a photo of them like, look at I'm covered in dirt. I just qualified on my M4, 24 out of 40. Like, that's marksman. Like, that's the kind of stupid shit that, like, I just dislike. It's one of the reasons I just don't like social media.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. I think it's just like human nature too, because you have like people that are more well balanced, I guess, like personality wise. They're more well balanced and like won't go that route. But then some people love to like flaunt or like to show off the fact that they are like special.
Yeah. Well, that being said, stuff that I do flaunt on my Instagram, one, I'm a very good charcoal griller.
I
Like,
could see that.
that is a speciality that I've developed now in the last month because of quarantine. Used to be a really good gas griller, but I don't have a gas grill here, so charcoal it is. Two, like basic feats of strength. Like I won't put up a squatting video if it's not like over 315,
Hmm.
deadlift like same, and cleans under 225. Like just basic acts of okay, I find this moderately impressive and I know the like four people that I actually converse with on a daily basis about fitness will enjoy it as well. But outside of that, I don't. And my mustache updates.
Oh
That's
yeah,
a
we still have to do a weekly update for mustaches.
yeah. Well, I'm almost at 30 days, so I'm pretty proud of this very bushy, thick, full mustache that has grown to my face.
I think this is the max mine's gonna get. This has been since March 2nd for me. So what's that? That's like 50 days. I think this is the extent of mine. I might start like twisting this up like this. Do the twist up, the
Yeah, I
wax.
might I might do the same just to get more on the face. But damn it, Bobby, we're getting away from the point. Cadet life,
Oh yeah.
being cadets in the military, whether you're on a normal campus or USMA. So I'll start with what life was like as a cadet in ROTC and what I did to grow into such a successful adult veteran now as my transitionary period is completely over. Caveat though, I did get a letter from some National Guard or Reserve unit that went to my parents' house asking if I wanted to rejoin. And I thought it was very sweet. My mom kept the letter for me, and after talking with her, immediately trashed it. So if you're listening and you think that I should be another officer for you to pull for your National Guard detail, you're mistaken. But back to being a cadet. I was fortunate enough. I had a 4-year Army scholarship to Lehigh. I think now most scholarships are only 3 years because they're concerned about awarding someone a scholarship and then after a year people dropping out. As part of my scholarship, I had to live in like an ROTC house my freshman year, which was, it's whatever. You missed out on some of the college experiences, which I'm sure you can definitely feel at USMA. I had PT like 3 times a week, but I did Ranger Challenge 3 out of my 4 years. And that was an awesome experience. But in general, I felt like being a cadet at an undergrad school wasn't really
Army.
like I didn't feel like I was like indoctrinated in military culture because I only had to wear a uniform once a week. I looked like an idiot because I was like 180 pounds, and I had this like giant, extra large, long uniform on. But in general, I didn't feel like I was like any way special just because I was in ROTC. I'll tell you one thing though, I'd have awful haircuts. Like I had awful high and tights all 4 years because that's what was told like you had to have.
Classic. Yeah, I mean, West Point was similar in some regards and completely different in other regards. Like we went, I mean, we wore uniform every day. So I've like worn uniform every day in school. We had breakfast formation and lunch formation class. I mean, it was just like a normal college during the, I guess, like academic year. We'd have classes during the day. And then around 4 o'clock, you get like your like company athletics or drilling time to go practice like parading or doing your intramural sports at 4. Besides that, it was pretty much normal. I would say like college experience. I think we definitely got indoctrinated a little bit in the military because we're surrounded by the Army at West Point. And then I don't know, which can be both positive and negative, put it that way. A lot of weirdos, I'll put that. I don't know how it is now, because I graduated 2012, so this was 8 years ago that I graduated, so I'm sure it's changed since then. But I just remember like freshman year, our plebe year, like we were only allowed one pass per semester to leave for 1 weekend pass per semester. So like guys, I just remember like my classmates wouldn't leave West Point and then would just stay in their room on weekends. Which is not the correct answer. I don't know how it is now, but like back then, that's how it was for us. But I still left like every weekend I left because we had like spirit passes. If like Army was playing like Navy or at Navy or something, you could take a pass down the Navy. Or if Army was playing at Air Force, you could go to the Air Force Academy. So I left like every weekend on like spirit passes, and I was in clubs too. I was on the Chinese club. It was dope. Chinese
That's
club.
weird. I don't see that.
Yeah. It was great because we would take trips like once a month to go wherever once a month. So it was just like my chance to have a normal college experience, put it that way. So
Yeah.
like I would say I had like a pretty much a regular college experience because I made myself have a regular college experience. Like on weekends, I would leave the academy and go do stuff and not stay there on weekends.
Yeah, it was the one thing going to a regular undergrad that I was never wanting for a regular college experience. Like you could literally go out every weekend. I joined a fraternity. I was in different clubs. I got to take whatever classes I wanted. I could skip class if I wanted to. So if you're wondering why my GPA was awful and I had to sign ADSO, like there you go, ding, ding, ding. I think that ROTC, I don't even know if that generally prepares you to be a good officer, to be honest. It's like 4 years, all we did was like drill down on basic squad level tactics and trying to max an APFT. And like that was your curriculum, and then minus the advanced camp between your junior and senior year.
Yeah, like I don't know if you know this, but I actually went to LDAC. One of my summers I went to LDAC. But yeah, I don't know like how much. I guess West Point. I don't know. Like, so I feel like so much of leadership is just doing it, and that
Yeah.
just by doing like academic, like we had like classes on like the art, like military art, whatever the fuck you want to call it, like the PME square. It's a professional military ethics. So we have like classes where we talk about it, but like that's not really, you know, beneficial to you. And I think at West Point, I think we definitely had a lot more opportunities to practice leadership. I think that's what separates a military academy from like more civilian like undergrad schools, is that there's a rank structure between all four classes. So like when you're a freshman, when you're a plebe, you're like a private. So you have all the private duties, cleaning up, like doing all the other private like duties. Then as a sophomore, you become a team leader, so you're in charge of a private. Sophomore year or junior year, you become a squad leader, like an NCO. So you get like practice leading a squad or platoon. And then as a senior, you're like an officer, so you get like platoon leader. You can be like company commander, battalion commander, regimental commander, and various other staff jobs. So you have like and then during the summers too, you have leadership details too, where you are put into leadership positions over the summers too. So overall, I think that West Point does like a pretty good job of giving you experience or giving you opportunities to practice leadership, and see what works and what doesn't work.
Yeah,
Like,
I think it goes back though. Like either you're a good leader or you're not,
yeah,
because for all the ROTC graduates out there, like there were always groups of people that did like National Guard in addition to being cadets. I know Lehigh, because the PA National Guard was so close to like Kutztown at Fort Indiantown Gap. We had probably, I would say like a quarter of every class was like in the National Guard. And so like they were either privates or specialists. And then you chill up to, you have to do once a week, like LPDs or, any kind of other tactical drill out in the, what is it called? What do we call that hour of class? Whatever, like we'd have to do that. But you'd see all of these like National Guard people that were your peers showing up with their like specialist rank on, and their unit patch was the PA guard patch, and you're just like, that doesn't make you like a good leader. And they all thought that that would like set them apart. So when they got to LDAC, you could either get like an E, which means that like you were like a top 10
oh, I
percenter,
know.
or you could get S's.
I got S's.
And like these National Guard kids all got S's. They weren't even in competition for like getting the Recondo badge.
Ooh,
If
I
like
got the
you were
Recondo
just,
badge.
I got the Recondo badge. I also got E's.
Actually, no, I didn't.
How dare you? I can't believe I'm business partners with someone who didn't get the Recondo badge or an E at LDAC. This is unreal.
Yeah.
That should have been like before being Ranger qualified.
I actually really liked. I'm not gonna lie. I actually liked LDEC a lot. I still talk to some of the guys in my LDEC squad.
Oh, one of my best buddies, James. We met at LDAC, and like when there's someone else in close proximity that you're like, we're probably very similar,
Yeah.
but like you're competing and you don't know them.
Yeah.
And you're like, I dislike this guy. And then you meet them and you talk to them like, wait a second, like we're friends. Like we were like that for the first 3 weeks of that course. And then we started talking about some of the like worthless people that were about to commission as officers. And we were like, wait a second, you dislike him? Yeah, I dislike him. He's a piece of shit. And we're like, are we friends now? And we've been friends since now 2010.
Yeah. Wait, didn't you? You went to L? We probably went to LDEC at the same time then, didn't we? Did you go when
I
you was
went.
at Lewis?
I was like the second. I was the first class that went to LDAC, but like in like the second regiment or something. However, there were like 16 regiments that went through. I was like, and they spanned it out over like the 8 weeks, and I was the first week, but like second regiment, like May or June, because I had to go to air assault immediately following it.
I'm trying to think. When did I think that I went. Fuck. Because you guys go before your senior year is correct.
Yes.
So I went a year I was a year younger than everybody, so I went going into my junior year. So this would have been summer of 2011. 2011, right?
No, you would have gone the same summer that I did.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh my God, we were there at the same time.
I don't know if I think I was like July, like mid to later. I was to say.
Yeah, well, we still would have been there by the time like I graduated. Like, you would have been just rolling in and been like super salty because we were such LDAC veterans. Yeah, that course. So being like a cadet at ROTC, I think the things that separate you from your peers are doing like the extracurricular military stuff. And I'm not talking about like drill and ceremony, volunteering to be like holding the flag for the anthem at your football game. Like doing Ranger Challenge was real eye opening. like just the basics of learning like 7-8 and 321 and how to patrol. Like I remember my freshman year, I thought there were 3 exit points to a patrol base because I was like, oh, there's 3 sides. That makes sense. Like, and there's like, who wrote this down on this test? And I was like, me. And they're like, get out of here. Like, you're an idiot. So that was my one recommendation is like, do good PT. For all the people out there that are wondering like what programs you need to follow if you're like a sophomore or a junior and you want to be like in the 75th Ranger Regiment, like just pump the brakes, just max the APFT, maybe start maxing like your 5 mile run and try to get that at 35 and do a 2.5 hour 12 miler. And that's all you should really be focusing on. All the other stuff, like it'll come with time because you're going to spend 6 months at Benning before you even get to Ranger School to really develop any other particular skill sets you would need to be using.
Yeah, although I would say I think it is beneficial to start weightlifting earlier rather than later. Like I started lifting weights when I was like 12 years old, so I've always lifted weights. Have not been a good runner though. Did not become a good runner until much later.
So you had to.
Until I had to run, yeah.
Yeah.
And even then,
No,
I
I didn't
only
lift
ran
weights
like
at all.
What was I saying? Go ahead.
I didn't lift weights at all. Like I would only do upper body. Like I think the first time I squatted was on my first deployment when they were like, "Oh, there's a 1,000 pound club." I was like, "Oh, I don't even want to see what my squat was." I think I did 315, and I'm sure it was a quarter squat for the purpose of like the grading for getting the 1,000 pound club. But I could not put shit on my back and take it down to parallel.
So I will say that that's probably where I found more success as I started weightlifting at a much younger age and was like pretty. Also, I was pretty like physically developed by the time I got to like West Point, and then definitely by the time I got in the Army, I was pretty strong by that point. But I did not do anything in the cardio wise until like I didn't start running until I got into the Army. I'll put it that way.
Yeah, I loved running. Like I would take the like alpha ability group out when I was a senior because I was like, oh, if everyone has to run, I'm gonna make the fast kids run what I want to run because I'm getting ready for IBOLIC. So like selfishly, you're gonna do what I do, and I would make it a goal that every single I think it was Tuesday we'd have ability group runs. I was gonna vomit at some point during the run, and that would be like the okay, we're done running today kind of thing. Like Sean is thrown up. Everyone else must have gotten a great workout, or you just weren't pushing it hard enough. But we had some like cross country runners that could do like a 25-minute 5 miles. So me taking them out at like a 6:30, 6:40 wasn't doing anything.
Yeah, yeah. I don't know at West Point what you would, because it's just like because it's so varied. I'll put it that way. Like the best cadets don't make the best officers. I'll put it that way too. Like
Oh no no. Well, it's just like all the guys at Regiment that I know that are from West Point. It was either like they were on some sort of a varsity team, like weightlifting, rugby, ton of football players, or they were like the one dude that wasn't on any of that, and that was like the outlier. Like I truly don't think I really. But you did weightlifting there,
not competitively.
like so like. But I don't know. I can't think of maybe one dude in 175 while I was there, at least that I knew was from West Point, that like was not an athlete. Because like typically you can spot a West Point dude because they're weird and they're quoting like Clausewitz and Rommel, like because they went to all those leadership courses that you were enrolled in, and they think that that's like good to just quote on the reg. But yeah, like I don't know that many like non-athletes out at West Point.
Yeah, I always think it's kind of funny because during our times at West Point, I just remember the kind of the culture was that all the core squad athletes, so all the Division 1 athletes were all shitbags because they didn't do like the normal cadet stuff. So they were
You
like,
didn't have to march hours.
yeah, dude, no, that's what the sentiment was amongst like the non-athletes was that the athletes were like substandard cadets because they used their team privileges to not do the normal cadet bullshit. So they weren't as good, quote unquote, good cadets because they didn't do all the stupid shit that everybody else had to do. But that's fucking ass backwards too. Like, how are you gonna blame a D1 athlete for not having to like. How are you gonna like talk shit to a D1 athlete that they have to they don't have to do like them go parading and go marching? It's like why the fuck
Oh,
that doesn't make sense.
it makes zero sense. And so one of my best buddies growing up was a captain on the swim team. Subsequently went infantry, and then he and I graduated in the same ranger class and got to stand next to each other. And like we've known each other since we were 10 years old. And that was something that he said because I didn't really know too much about West Point. When we both were at IBOLC, he was like, just watch. Like, you're going to be able to spot West Pointers that are normal and typically athletes, and the West Pointers that are like those Boy Scouts, like we talked about, I think, last week, and who are going to marry the first woman that they meet at a bar in Auburn or, downtown Columbus or up in Atlanta from Georgia Tech. And, like, that's going to be it for them. And, like, generally going to be that group in Ranger School that you're trying to peer desperately, but there's just too many West Pointers to really, affect any positive change to the graduating class. So that was a real eye opener. Was like you were either a West Point athlete or you were like a West Point Boy Scout.
West
And
Point
like
nerd.
West Point nerd.
Yeah, I've
Yeah.
always It's like such a weird culture they have at West Point. At least when I went there, at least such a weird like conflicting sides between like athletes versus non-athletes, and it just like didn't make sense to me. Like I it was so weird to me because I was on the strength team, so like I was like a assistant strength coach essentially. That's pretty much what it was a glorified like strength coach for the football team. So I worked with the football team for 3 years of my strength team experience, and like listening to some of the non-athletic cadets talk about football players, calling them like pieces of shit, like lazy or like dumb. I'm like, dude, you guys don't understand like how many hours like football players put in, because these dudes, like when I was there, they would go to class, wake up at 6:30 in the morning, go to class all morning, and then around 2 o'clock they would go to practice. They'd be at practice from like 2 o'clock until 8 o'clock at night, and then go back to their rooms and study for the same
Yeah.
class that everybody else is taking.
And some of those dudes that graduated that ended up in the 75th were also like regimental commanders.
Mm-hmm.
Like they had some very senior roles because they were academically proficient as
Yeah.
well as being like excellent football and
Mm-hmm.
Division I athletes. So I think that's the other thing. Oh, and if you're an ROTC, you're not an athlete. I'm just throwing that out there because I remember going to a couple schools and I think like schools like Auburn allow ROTC cadets to go to the athlete dorms for some reason as like, you're an athlete
sweet.
as well because you're on the ROTC team.
That's sick.
And so I've met some cadets that thought they were like Division I athletes and just like, no, don't wear your dog tags out. Like here are all the things you shouldn't do if you go to undergrad at a normal school. Don't wear your dog tags. Like that's awful. I did it a couple times. I look like an idiot. I will never do it again. If that picture resurfaces, like I will murder you. Don't wear your boots that you've been issued around campus with like a pair of jeans. You wouldn't do it as like a second lieutenant or a first lieutenant. Maybe you will if you're armor, but if you're infantry and cool, you don't. And generally don't have an ego for service since you've not even graduated or commissioned yet or done any real training. You've gone to a couple FTXs and pulled security as like a saw gunner with a plastic rubber ducky. Like,
Yeah.
just be humble.
I would say the biggest thing for success is that, don't distinguish yourself as being in the army or being in the military, because it's not really, you're not, you haven't earned that distinction quite yet.
And get good grades. Holy shit. Like, if I
Right.
could do anything over again, I would have gotten good grades. I can't tell you how difficult it was applying to law schools and being like, but look, I did good Army. And they'd be like, but look, you barely spelled it correctly one time on this entire sheet for your application. Like, GPA matters. And unless you're coming from like a soft unit and applying to like these really prestigious MBA programs or law school, like you're not going to be able to pull one over on the admin faculty because they're not going to care if your GPA was sub 3.0. Like they're just going to say we're not even going to. That's not even going to bring. We're going to bring down our national average, and when these rankings matter so much based off an incoming class, we're not risking that for you just because you wore a uniform. So like you need like a 3.3 up, if you want to be competitive at all to get into some like good schools post graduation.
Yeah, I would say like one thing that I was actually, I if I could go back, I think I would actually study harder. Um, Even though I had like a pretty good GPA, I just like didn't really apply myself very well. It's kind of funny. It's really interesting because I think that I will say that I don't think West Point is very academically rigorous as far as other schools go, like other like elite institutions go. Like I honestly did not think that like West Point classes were very hard, and then I don't know if that's like kind of cocky or cocky for me to say that, but I just had to think. I mean, you just had to think like I don't think put it this way, like West Point, graduates all Army officers. So like there's also dumb off like not the smartest ones too that graduate as well. So it's just like I don't think that West Point was very academically rigorous. So I didn't ever. Like I didn't learn didn't learn how to study until I got to med school, and didn't really understand how to study until I got to med school. Because at West Point, I could literally just get by without doing anything. I was getting like B's and
Uh,
A's without doing any work.
I would just cram an undergrad, and like I still have nightmares now that I'm back in school of like waking up in statistics. I've taken a couple statistics classes. The first class that I took, I still have nightmares about because I still remember walking into the final after staying up all night to study, and that entire test is a blur. I do not remember a single question. I don't remember what I studied. If I studied, I know I passed the course. I think I got like a B or a B plus in it, but I remember being like terrified to this day of like, what was that exam on? Like I can't remember it. And like good study habits, like you mentioned, I finally developed them because I always thought as like an ROTC cadet, I'm gonna have a job after I graduate. Like what does my GPA matter? And
Mm-hmm.
then you find out it's like 40 or 50% of your evaluations for where you fall and if you go active duty or if you get your first branch choice. And it's like I had to cram my junior year to get a better grade just to be competitive to get infantry. Um, and you can max out, like I maxed out every other category on that OML sheet between like LDAC, extra Army schools, PT, and like even with an awful GPA, I still had to sign an ADSO because I finished in like the top 11% and wasn't a top 10%, so it wasn't guaranteed for a branch.
Mm-hmm.
So branch was like, yeah, we're gonna take your ADSO. Thanks so much for not giving any fucks during your first 2 years of school. Like, get good grades, guys.
Yeah, I think that's like a good kind of jumping off is that if you, I guess, high performers are going to be high performers no matter where or what you do, you know?
Yeah.
So, like, if someone is going to be high performing, they're going to have like an inherent or like natural tendency or personality where they will want to push themselves more than they need to in order to excel. Whether that's in academics or like in school or like in the military or just like in physical fitness. Like people who are high performers are gonna be high performers regardless of whatever avenue or whatever sphere it is. They're gonna be high performers or try to be high performers and try to excel regardless what it is. So, you know, lazy. Like if you're gonna be lazy, you're gonna be lazy. It doesn't matter what you're gonna do. So I find that like when people ask us like what they should do in undergrad or in high school to prepare themselves in the military, it's like it's hard to like tell. There's no one right answer for everything. It's like a lot of it's personality driven and being able to understand who you are as a person and your own personality type, and being able to either take advantage of that personality type or to work to fix that personality type. Like I am inherently pretty fucking lazy. That's one of my major character flaws is I'm very fucking lazy. And that I'm also so I'm super lazy, like inherently lazy. So I have a tendency, like I know I have a tendency to take shortcuts, or I know I have a tendency to not do to put in the effort because I know that I have a lot of inherent or born skills, like my intelligence. Like I know that I'm probably smarter than the average person. So like I know that I can get by with my intelligence, or I know I can get by with doing other things. So that I know that when I want to be lazy, I have to tell myself not to be lazy and to do the work and do the right thing because I know if I fall into that trap of paying, like falling into the trap of like following my own character nature, I'm gonna fail or not do as well as I should do. So that's just like being aware of yourself and your own personality and being able to either to uphold that personality or to go make yourself better.
Yeah. And like, I know we say we can't tell you what to do. I'll tell you what to do if you're an ROTC cadet and like you want to go infantry. Here, like, it's like Michael Scott's 10 things to leadership. I'm just going to list them off, and there's probably going to be less than 10. But number one, max your APFT or the ACFT. Like, you should do that as an infantry officer before you even get to IBOLC, because you're going to be competing for slots, and it's not that hard of a standard to meet. Two, be a normal person.
How?
And like, how do you be normal?
How do you define normal?
Don't be a weirdo. Don't creep on social media.
How do you know?
Don't like put stuff up that you're a cadet in the military. Like, again, don't wear the dog tags out, the boots out. Like, that's dead giveaway number one that you're not a normal person. Don't put stuff on your truck like your airborne wings just because you graduated and you're an ROTC. Number three, get good grades. Number four, I said be normal, but I'm gonna say be normal again. Like, just read, like, and don't read like military textbooks just because you think that's what your battalion commander wants to talk about when you're doing your first initial counseling. Like, what military historian do you like the most? Chances are, if that's the question, it's a West Pointer, and you're already going to lose because you're not a West Point graduate and you're not knocking your ring, in their office or wearing a Stetson. And again, most likely, if that's the first question you're getting asked, you're in a Cav unit, so your career's shot anyway. Like, good luck climbing out of that. I would say number five is like find a really good friend group. Like, you should have peers that are cadets that can be a year older, a year younger. But generally speaking, like the people that I was closest to in ROTC, aside from like the Ranger Challenge crew, like most of them now are Ranger qualified, couple SF, and most went like combat arms branches or like the top three branches that people could choose from. So like infantry, aviation, like engineer, like-minded people typically associate with other like-minded individuals. And you're going to see that because those same people that you're friends with when you leave college and you're now a brand new second lieutenant at IBOLC are probably the same people that when you say to them, hey, I'm going to drop a packet to go to SFAS, I'm going to drop a packet to go to regiment, they actually still follow through and do it.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you'll be amazed, and now we're at like the IBOLC discussion, but you'll be amazed when you're at IBOLC how many people say they have these aspirations to go SOF, and then none of them ever follow through because they get caught up partying at IBOLC and they've got their Ranger tab and so they're set, or they just never put forth any effort after they were at their first unit because they got super comfortable at being like the big dog XO that's been there for 4 years, and they can ruin the lives of all brand new second lieutenants because they've had 3 positions, within that battalion since getting there. So just come up with a plan. If you're going to say you're going to do something, like, do it. There's nothing worse than 5 years into your service and you look back at your peers and you're like, hey, what happened? And they come up with just like a shit ton of excuses. Like, don't be an excuse.
Yeah, to kind of hop on what you said about finding good peer groups or finding good friends, I think one of the I actually had this thought the other night when I was thinking about this too. When I was a freshman, the seniors in my company were awesome. Like, these guys were just like the kind of prototypical like good leaders or good army officers that you kind of picture. I think all of them went either infantry or combat. I think a couple went like aviation, but everyone went infantry. All got their tabs. But like as a freshman, they had this same group of guys. They all would wake up at 5 to go do CrossFit together, and that's where I started doing CrossFit. It's because these guys are waking up at 5 in the morning before breakfast formation to go to the gym to go work out, and then for the rest of the day. And then these guys were also like athletes. Like, some guys are boxers, some other guys were like company level athletes or whatever. So they have like were the kind of people that really tried to excel, the ones that really had persevered and ones that had grit. And then I was really fucking lucky as like a freshman to be welcomed into that culture in my company. Because I just remember it was like me and another freshman were the only ones that would take the opportunity to train with these guys. And this is where I learned how to do CrossFit. It was like with these guys at 5 in the morning for my entire freshman year. Was that and that looking back on it laid such a framework or such the groundwork for like me kind of growing through the years at West Point. Because I can't imagine what like my life would be like if I didn't have wasn't in with these guys because I never would have discovered CrossFit. I never would have gotten my level 1 certification. I never would have done all this stuff if it wasn't for these guys. So I find that to be like a very great point to pass to people is to like find mentors too. And then you'll find, I think mentorship is like a great tool that you can find. It doesn't have to be like in my mind, like I don't think I've ever had too many like formal mentors, like a formal mentor mentee relationship, which is like, I don't quite believe in like the formal relationship because in med school, they try to like put us into have like a mentor and like, give us that relationship. But it's like, it seemed like too fake. It was too forced upon me, so I didn't really get much out of it. But I find myself, I don't know, like I think that you gravitate to people that are similar to you, and that the ones that you gravitated to, like you want to gravitate towards like the ones that are high performing as well. And I think that was like a huge benefit and to like really extremely influential in my development as like a as a man, as a army officer, as a athlete or whatever, was that I had such good role models to follow.
Right. No, I mean that's 100%. I was fortunate enough. My parents were both in. My mom was a pilot. My dad was Ranger qualified in FA. So like growing up was like, all right, like you can there are certain steps that you should achieve while you're in service. And like for me, getting my Ranger tab was like paramount to that because it was like growing up and seeing my dad. But then when I got to school, there was an SF cadre member that had been enlisted in the 75th, enlisted SF, and then went back SF as an officer. And I remember talking with him quite extensively, and like it became very apparent that he believed in the same thing. Like, hey, like don't rest on your laurels. Like you've got to identify the next goal, and you have to get after it. And we had some cadre that came through that were junior officers that had either gotten their CIB or were Ranger qualified, and they would talk about it as if that was like this great distinguishing piece that separated them from every other person that had ever served and made them like so fantastic. And I remember this guy just looking at them being like not impressed. Like you guys had opportunities, ample opportunities to go and do something like and just not be normal. And I guess what I'm saying, like I think everyone should try out for Ranger School. Like whether you fail or not, like go for it. I mean, I think like everyone should try out for one of the SOF units. Like it just whether you fail or you're successful, the fact that you sought something out beyond just the standard, army path like speaks volumes. So like I've got friends that were unsuccessful at RASP, unsuccessful at SFAS, and were successful at all those courses. And it's like it's the same core group of guys that you're going to be friends with for a long time because regardless of whether or not they were successful, they still went out and tried to achieve something better than just the status quo. So like don't fall into the path of just least resistance and just getting your major, picking ILE, and then going to some pre-battalion command broadening assignment and then getting your battalion command. It's just so boring. Like be unique, be best.
Yeah, I would say like one of I don't know where this thought came from for me, like where what stemmed from, but like you never make it. That's one of my like I guess like life mottos or like themes that I put in my life is that you never make it. Like you're never gonna be the smartest, you're never gonna be the strongest, you're never gonna be the fastest, you're never gonna be the best leader, you're not gonna be the smartest doctor, you're never gonna be the best lawyer. You never make it. Like at every stage of your life, there's always gonna be somebody that's better than you are. So then, why would you brag? For example, why would you brag about getting your Ranger tab when you've just done you're just another one of tens of thousands of people that've done the same thing,
Yeah.
It's like you never make it. Like you never make it when you graduate SFAS because there's 1,000 other Green Berets out there. you never make it when you get to CAG because CAG, there's thousands of CAG operators. You never make it as, an astronaut because there are hundreds of astronauts that have also made it too. Like, you're never gonna be the first fucking person to do anything. So why would you try to define yourself by that characteristic when hundreds of thousands of other people have done the same thing and have still moved beyond that and moved past that and still use, I never satisfied because you never make it. And that's the thing that I've really kind of taken to heart the last couple of years, is that you're never on top. There's always something that you can get better at. There's always something that you can do. And that
Yeah, I
when
mean,
you
think Thor 1. Thor thought he was this badass. Then Odin stripped him of his powers in Mirror, and now he's nobody. He always thought that being Thor was cool. Thor got his ass kicked by Thanos. Like, there's always someone up there, higher up on the pole that's going to knock your ass down. So show some humility, even if you're Chris Hemsworth.
Yeah. And and that was just like, you never quite make it, and then there's always somebody out there that is going to be better than you are. So why would you rest on your laurels knowing that you're not the best? But that's probably just that's also like a personality type thing too, where like I don't know, like I want to be the best too, and that's like a personality thing that that I have, is that I want to be the best version of myself that I can be. But not everybody wants that too, and I think that's what separates like high performers from medium and low performers, is that the people who are high performer are the ones that don't accept the status quo or don't accept mediocrity. The ones that accept, they're the ones that push themselves to the higher limits and push themselves to the next level.
Well, dope. What do you got going the rest of the week as far as your mileage is concerned?
So this week I did 31 miles, so I think I'm gonna go up to probably 34, 35 this week. I don't know. This week was actually kind of a big jump for me. I went from like 20 something last week to 31 this week, so it's kind of a big jump. So I don't know. I'd see how it feels, but I know next Saturday I want to do 30K, which is like 18 and a half miles. So I also still want to get some decent mileage on the other days too when I'm not training or not running. So I'm just trying to figure out it's like weird. Just like trying to figure it out because it's like so new to me, I don't really understand or I don't really know like the volume my body is able to take and recover from quite yet, because I've never really tracked. This is the most like by far I've ever run in my life in terms of weekly mileage, and this is like just starting, and this already like 20 miles a week is by far more than I've run in my entire life in a week, like by far.
Good. Well, you'll get up there for the ultra.
Yeah, so it's just like so I'm still trying to work it out and see how it goes, but I think there's still something to be said about being physically fit and doing other things, because I find myself like it's not super hard. I've noticed too. Like I don't know, like it's weird because like I've a good cardio and aerobic base. So like, when people talk about like training for like ultra marathons, like you need to have they say that you should have like a 40 like at least a base, like aerobic base of 40 miles per week. Like I did like a 32-mile week already, and I feel fine. So it's just like,
I think that's gonna start like
adding up,
compounding though, like in a couple weeks, and then as you start throwing in some longer intervals, like you can run every day at a comfortable like zone 2 and be fine, but all of a sudden you're gonna have to run zone 4 for 3 minutes and then a minute at a zone 2, like all of those recovery methods for increasing your aerobic capacity just destroy you later that day. I mean, I remember doing some like hard ass runs when I was at Benning, and I would pass out for like 2 hours afterwards when I'd get back to my apartment. Which, by the way, I lived off Kilgore and Gillespie. So if you're living in Norton Village at Fort Benning, you are in good company. That's the place to live. Don't live at whatever I Bullock Hall, I Plaza, whatever the hell. Although it's right off one of the like shittier gates at Benning. That's another thing. Just live on post. It's way easier just to get to everywhere, and you got great gyms. Independence Place. Don't live at Independence Place.
Oh, I live downtown. I lived in downtown Columbus, in the lofts. Great time.
Yeah, you had a great loft.
Yeah,
it was right next to Iron Bank.
Pretty close. Brian had the best one. Evil and Phoenix lofts.
Yeah.
Dude, I think Columbus might be like a decent place now. I don't know. Would you go back?
It's great. I mean, like the riverfront's awesome. You got some good restaurants, great bars. Uh, you're essentially out there on your own. You're not dealing with like any big city traffic. You can go to Auburn for sporting events. You can go to what's that place up in Atlanta that had it was near Georgia Tech, but it had like the pizza place like the
Buckhead.
like Buckhead, yeah, but there was another. There was like this super Italian pizza place where like it was like big communal tables.
I
Um,
don't know.
it was if you know, you know. I don't know the name of it because I'm not Italian, so
Yeah.
pizza.
I will say I actually probably did not take advantage of Atlanta as much as I should have when I was there. I think I was just like so fucking burnt out, so tired from like training during the week with at 375 that on weekends I was like, fuck this, I'm sleeping and just working
It's
out.
also a little bit too far to get to for like a standard
Yeah,
like
I
night
understand.
out because you're going to be driving an hour and and a half back on some country roads and like nobody wants to deal with that coming back at 1 o'clock in the morning.
Yeah. Um, but yeah. Anything else we want to talk about? I'm trying to think.
No, I'm gonna knock out. We're taking off from here on Thursday, driving across country. So the next time we podcast will be on the same coast, and I will be in a full like Mop 5 gear in New York City.
Dude, I saw. Well, it's kind of weird. I saw something online that said that like one thousandth, one out of every 1,000 New Yorkers have had COVID.
Damn.
But then that's only 0.1%, which if you think about it, isn't that much either. But I also know that New Yorkers done some like weird stuff with their COVID reporting and their statistics too, and their data too.
Yeah, I saw something. I also saw Governor Cuomo had a pretty good clapback at President Trump. Because if anyone's been watching like these campaign style weekly updates
Yeah.
that he's running, and the very rosy picture that he's painting, I think depending on what side of the aisle you sit on, you either appreciate it or you just sit there and make like political satire out of it. But yeah, the governor was pretty angry. I mean, like New York's the worst when it comes to COVID. So like I think New York City, just because it is such a close community there, it's like no one really drives, everyone walks or
Mm-hmm.
takes the subway, which is different than every other major city in the country.
Mm-hmm.
So that's probably why the cases are getting out of
Yeah.
hand.
It's very interesting. Also, I'm just really kind of curious to see what comes out of the whole COVID pandemic because somebody else brought up this really good point in that hospitals are not somebody but Christina was saying that the hospital is like half it's running like half capacity right now because all the sick people that normally would go to the hospital aren't going to the hospital because they're scared of
Yeah.
it. So like I'm kind of interested to see the data that comes out from this like that last couple months about like heart attacks or like strokes or like other like medical emergencies that
Or
people.
like bullshit ER visits. We had a friend come over last night at a social distancing 6 feet, of course, saying the same thing that like you really see how many people abuse the system coming in for like bumps and scrapes that now they're like, oh, I'm not risking it. It's clearly not that big of a deal. I don't want to contract corona while I'm at a hospital.
But then like I know there's like there's also a large amount of people that aren't coming to the hospital for very severe things. Like people aren't coming in for like chest pain for like heart attack because they don't want to get coronavirus, and then they sit at home and then die from a heart attack or die from like a stroke or
Caused by
yeah,
coronavirus.
which is caused by coronavirus. I saw it's super cool because like people get sick, like people get sick no matter what, but like if they don't come to the hospital, like you don't know if they're sick. So people are just dying at home or getting sick at home and then not going to the hospital. So I'm just curious to see what comes out from all the data because there's gonna be, I guarantee there's gonna be some very cool data that comes out of this.
Yeah, I'll be interested, but I think we'll be able to next week. I'll give you an update on what city life is like in the Corona capital.
All right. Any other concluding thoughts that you have? And
Be best.
be best. Any other announcements? Hats? Hats?
Oh, hats. Yeah, we got to get the. I'm so sorry. I've been lagging on this. I've got to get this onto the site and a couple different varieties.
Yeah, I don't have any other announcements either. Leave a review, leave a comment, let us know how we're doing. This is going to go on YouTube too, so it'll be on YouTube as well. normal programming this week. Still Corona programming. But yeah, nothing. Still status quo on my end at least.
Big running week this week for people out there. So did a 10K yesterday for military prep. So expect up to a 15K later this week, probably on Friday instead of a rest day.
Ooh, 15K. That's one thing people have been saying is that they have been enjoying the change of pace in the programming style, which I think is good. That's a great feedback to have.
How dare you have anything to say and be upset with us?
I know. It's like I really appreciate the guy. I had some people reach out saying, "Oh, this functional fitness program has been a great change of pace. I don't know if I want to go back to the regular functional fitness stuff." And I was like, you don't have to. But I cannot wait to get back to a barbell. Put it that way.
Oh yeah. I'm looking forward to that, but I'm also looking forward to like getting my road bike out in the city and getting some like really good mileage in on running.
Yeah, I'm just looking for the fucking move and get the fuck out of Jersey and going back and going to like a normal state.
Yeah, normal.
Yeah.
Oh, God. R.I.P.
Jersey. All right. Well, I guess we'll wrap it up with that.
Is that how we're leaving it? Or
I don't know. I was like, we should come up with like a fucking like tagline, some kind of like concluding tagline, like Cronus fit. Fitness shouldn't be a secret. Be somebody.
Cronus fit. Fitness is not a secret. Be somebody. Rangers lead the way. Be best. Don't wear your dog tags and your boots out.
Yeah. Don't be a nerd.
Mic drop.
Don't be a nerd.
Don't be a nerd.
That's my biggest one. Don't be a nerd.
Yeah.
All right.
Don't go to USMA.
Made me who I am today.
Right.
But there are a lot of weirdos for that way.
Don't be a Boy Scout then. How about that? You can go to USMA. Don't be a Boy Scout.
Don't be a weird
Be an athlete.
Just don't be a weird nerd.
Yeah.
All right. We'll catch you guys later.
Bye.
Peace.